A question exists in theology in general about whether we have free will or if everything that we're going to do and say is predetermined by God. And this is a debate that flourished not just within Christianity, but within Islam and Judaism and other faiths.
I can understand a plan that God might have for the world, for my life. That is a plan for wholeness, a plan for health, a plan for life. There are all kinds of choices I can make. And there are all kinds of things that can happen to me living in a broken world that might make it hard for me to have a healthy and whole life.
So there is a program where we cannot go really wild. When we talk about disasters, human-made tragedies, sometimes we're so astonished that we think, where was God in this? And is this what free will can really do? And then we realize that in spite of the atrocities that may happen, there is a limit to it. So there is a combination of what we can do in the limits that are given.
The idea of a God who moves all the chess pieces around and controls the machinery and turns people into puppets, that kind of picture of God makes no sense to me at all.
For example, I am in a male body, I am 40 years old, I am in a brown skin or whatever. I cannot change this. I received this kind of body because of my previous choices, and this is my karma. I cannot change that. So the kind of nature and inclinations I have, this is what I have planted in the past, and I am receiving the results of this in the present.
All this is that we have nowadays, it is somehow a continuation of the kind of life we had, previously speaking.
Well, karma is part of the laws of nature. That is there in the Bible also. As you sow, shall you reap. It means that if you plant some seed, and then they will germinate and become a plant, and the plant will produce the fruits that you will reap.
Free will is the basis for karma. If I plant something today, I will reap the fruit in the future. But the choice of planting or not planting, and what I'm going to plant is mine. So if I am harvesting beans or corn or rice, that means some time ago, sometime in the past, I chose to plant that same grain.
There is a passage in the Bible where it says, before we're born, our names are already written in the book, in God's book. That God knows us from the very beginning. All of our lives have meaning and inherent worth from the beginning.
Through our own efforts, we can elevate ourselves and approach divinity, approach God. On the other hand, we can lower ourselves down to the level of the beasts. So that's what makes us different from animals, because animals, they don't have the free will we were given by God.
God puts in our hands a responsibility to make decisions and choices.
The human being has within the breath of God, one's higher self, the divinity. It also has the slinking whisperer. At every moment has to make a choice. So I have that choice at every moment in my life.
If you take a newborn baby and as they begin to grow, if at every step we're holding them and the child never learns to walk, he'll never be able to do it on its own. God is similar in that way. We have this free will because the spirits tell us in the Spirit's book, in the Gospel according to Spiritism, that we ourselves must learn through experience. We are born simple and ignorant and inexperienced. We would say, according to Spiritism. So we need to go through these experiences.
Religion and morality in particular, ethics would make no sense whatsoever unless I have free will, unless you have free will.
Work gives me freedom. It gives me money and it gives me opportunity and it's fun, but people hate work. So we escape from freedom. We run away from freedom.
And the question is, am I coming from my higher self in what I'm saying, in what I'm doing, or am I coming from my lower self, my ego self? And I have a choice at every single moment, and that is what determines, am I becoming a better human being, a more developed human being?
It's really a matter of spiritual awareness, of being present enough to the immediacy to be able to have our responses generate in response to the moment, rather than in some preconceived idea of what's happening.
And if we get in touch with us, with ourselves, and do our inner trip and constantly be in contact with my true self, that will be easier for me to understand what are the limitations of my free will. And naturally, we will respect our values and our nature.
Free will means that with your developed intelligence, you can do good for yourself, or you can just misuse this human form for bad things.
I should not expect to choose to survive the fall, because there is gravity, there is a law, there are consequences that follow the choices we make.
When you really make every effort to make your personality, which is nothing more than a bundle of conditioned reactions to life circumstances, I make my personality in alignment with my higher self. Because I have my divine self, I have my personality. Can I make both come closer and closer? Can my thoughts be in alignment with my words and my actions? That is a choice I have at every moment. And if I seek God's help, my path becomes easier.
My acts have consequences for good and for evil. My acts have healthy consequences. My acts have unhealthy consequences. Choose wisely.
If I am tense all the time and I'm angry all the time, it is going to make me sick eventually. And I can also make other people sick. So I do believe kind of in the collective impact of people's being not well, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually.
We need to understand that a human being is made of a spiritual and a physical body. And both bodies are interconnected, like two sides of a coin. So whatever happens in one side affects in the other, because they are dependent on each other.
Is that whatever we do actually will come back to us at some point. We will see the results. We will enjoy the results of that, or we will suffer. So by using our free will, we can better our lives. Also by misusing our free will, we can put ourselves in a situation of lamentation.
We can see in our lives, in everything we do, the action and reaction is present everywhere.
So in order for us to live in a society, to live harmonious, we need to know until our freedom, free will and freedom, the ability to decide and to make decision, to make choice, has this limitation because our free will finish when the other free will starts.
So we need to be suspicious about people who try to use God to manipulate others.
Muslims themselves saying it's God's will and they are committing acts of terror, it's wrong. I mean, it's clearly in the Quran. There's actually rules of engagement for war. And I think this upsets a lot of people, but one reason I respect it is because the other books say, do not kill a person, do not do this, it's a sin, do not do this. But they don't explain when you could perhaps do it, but they do it. So this is one reason I thought it was realistic, because to try to come to terms with the violence in the world, and there's two reasons in Islam that you could commit an act of violence, and one is if people steal your land or they stop you from practicing your faith. So the second has been widely used against Americans and other countries from various leaders of groups that are fed up with, I'd say, the Western idealism or imperialism, colonialism, however you'd like to state it, and they don't see other ways out besides being violent.
In our tradition, we put a lot of emphasis on being responsible and learning as much as we can so that we can make the best decisions that we can make with the knowledge that we have. And even so, we know that most things are outside of our control.
And the same person may be in one moment more under the energy of goodness, in another moment in the same day may be more under the influence of ignorance. And those energies will push people to take some decisions. The desire to choose something is coming from somewhere else. We may choose what we do, but we cannot choose what we desire.
I think there's a little caveat there. I think that we can make choices, but to the extent that we are able to understand the consequences of our choices. And so sometimes that explains why we feel like we can have a choice to do things, and sometimes we feel powerless, we don't have a choice. It's because either it's a consequence of a previous act that we had, or it's because we're not able to make a good decision, so somebody else makes it for us that has a little bit more of a learning. But yet, we do believe that because God is so great and God knows all the choices we're going to make, even if we haven't already made them.
God, who is all aware, God must be aware of the choices I will be making.
And so, in the midst of my life, I have choices. There are alternatives for me. There are ways that I can choose to follow the Lord or not. There are consequences to that. But at the same time, I can point to a God that I believe has dreams and aspirations for me and for my life that I can choose to be a part of.
There is a price to the choices we make. If we choose to do good, there will be a price that we will receive for doing good. If we decide to do evil, there is a price for that as well.
Krishna speaking to his devotee Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, after explaining detailed instructions about spiritual life, about the process of yoga through 18 chapters, then in the end of the book, Krishna says, Yatecha Sita Takuru. Now you have heard, and now you do as you like. So Krishna is God himself speaking to his devotee, but basically he's saying that even as God I'm not going to interfere with your free will.
Followers of Islam submit themselves to the will of God, but this does not mean we just sit back and let things happen to us and then blame God for whatever we don't like. This submission means constantly striving to understand and embody the will of God.
What God expects of us is that we keep His commandments. Now, He will not force anybody to keep His commandments. That is a choice. But at the end, we will get according to our choices.
In fact, it's one that we think is really great because it shows how loving God is to trust us making our own decisions. And many times we make bad decisions over and over again, and yet God lets us do that until we learn it of ourselves. We don't see it as a punishing God, we see it as a loving God.
I can make choices, there are consequences to those choices. I do not believe that God, again, it is a kind of puppeteer. Oh, if you do this, then this will happen to you. We certainly know examples of people making bad choices that don't have bad consequences, at least not immediately. And we know of some really good and faithful people who experience some hard times.
A lot of the things that we are facing today are the consequences of our previous acts, either in this life or in a previous life. So the concept of God becomes a more encompassing one, a more caring one, a more loving one, that in fact has not neglected us, has not abandoned us, quite the opposite. It's actually giving us a way for us to move forward and learn through our own actions.
God is all-knowing and that He's outside of time, which is an idea that's really hard for me to wrap my mind around because I'm contained within time. But God is outside, as the Creator, He's outside of time. So He knows all of our behavior, our actions, our choices, but He is also, in the instruction of the Quran, in the revelation of the Quran, indicated that we have choice, that we have the opportunity to choose to do right and be rewarded for it, or to choose to do bad and to be held to account for that. And God, as a just God, could not punish us or hold us to account if we did something wrong that we had no choice in. So clearly there has to be a free will that we exercise when making those choices.
Now, do we believe that God is at work in that world? And we do. I certainly believe that in a God that doesn't cause suffering, but I certainly believe in a God that is in the midst of a suffering people. So when I suffer, I don't believe God is the cause of that suffering, but I believe that God is present in that suffering. God knows exactly what it feels like. And so God doesn't abandon me in that suffering. God doesn't say, I'll be back when things are better. But God knows me and is with me in the midst of that suffering.
So we do believe that there is a God, and we do believe that in fact God wants us to evolve, and that also God respects us so much as to give us our free will, has the ability to make choices. And based on the choices we make, we have certain consequences to our actions that may lead us into a path of a little bit more happiness or a little bit less happiness. However, we also know that at the end of the day, God being all love and all justice, and it's hard to understand a God that's all loving and all just without having free will in the picture.
Physical attributes and even personality, perhaps, attributes we've been given. We start out each person with some givens in our life, but that in each moment we have the opportunity to begin again. And that, I think, echoes resurrection and the Christ story of we can come through, or even our lot may be determined to some degree just by where we were born into, maybe even by some of the choices we've made, but that we may always begin again, and something beautiful can come out of that. So I do believe in free will.
That's the beauty of how God creates the dynamics of life. Whatever pathway I choose, I will end up encountering that which I must learn. It's inevitable. So we might as well accept the situation we find ourselves in, use prayer to encourage ourselves, and just go with it.
I know that I'm a maker of my own life, and what I ask is God to be with me and by me so that I make the best decisions that will lead me in the right direction.
God wants us to have free will so that we can exercise the hearts that God has endowed us with, so that we can really freely love people.
There's no love without free will. You can't force somebody to love someone else. They have to want to. They have to want to do that. Their own freedom. So love is based on free will. But the stakes here are much greater, I think, than we have any idea. The stakes are really the whole capacity to love and for goodness to exist. Evil has to exist, and we have to have free choice to choose either the good or the evil. Otherwise, nothing makes any sense in this world other than survival of the fittest, like in the animal kingdom.
Freedom, real freedom, is the ability to be so present in the moment that our responses come from the immediacy of that moment and are not preconditioned or conditioned.
So we see here free will is a very important factor. The freedom of choice is a very powerful thing, and one that shouldn't be taken as a joke or as by chance. Nothing in life happens by chance.